Welcome back to the Godot Report. Yo-Yo Games, the company in charge of the GameMaker game engine, announced that GameMaker will be switching to a subscription model, and devs are leaving in droves. To be clear, this change is only for new users. Anyone who already has a permanent license will not be affected. Yo-Yo Games was acquired by Opera back in January of this year for $10 million, and it seems that we are now feeling the effects. Many users expressed their disdain for the software-as-a-service business model. Some users pointed out that having a one-time payment was one of GameMaker's unique selling points. Anyone who was put off by Unity's royalty fees found haven in GameMaker. And I think user Blood of Gore said it best, quote, "I just don't understand why we're expected to shell out hundreds of dollars to do something that is free on other engines." The Godot community was quick to react, welcoming all GameMaker refugees with open arms. For any GameMaker devs out there who want to try Godot, I do offer a free full game beginner Godot course on my YouTube channel. I will link it in the description. I also highly recommend Emilio's GameMaker to Godot guide. It covers a lot of common GameMaker terminology and translates it to Godot. Multiplayer is being overhauled for the Godot 4.0 update. One of the most requested features in regards to multiplayer was the option to export a Godot project for use as a dedicated server. And to meet this demand, Godot 4.0 will come with a headless display option. Further work is being done to replace specific assets with what they are calling fake files. Fake files only contain metadata. For example, a fake audio file will not contain any audio, but it will retain information about the length and loops, etc. This means that server-side code relying on audio timing or texture sizes will still work correctly. When building the multiplayer API, two forms of network communications were introduced: RPCs to call functions remotely, and RSets to set variables remotely. RSets seemed like a fast way to prototype and easily make your game networked, but they proved to almost always be a bad idea. First, there's very little control over who's setting it, besides the master keyword. Anything more complex than that, and you would need a function so you can base your logic on the RPC caller, which basically makes a standard RPC call the better choice. And second, real-world performance was bad. Every single networked variable synced with an RSet required its own network packet. This was not good for bandwidth nor latency, and so for these reasons, RSet will be removed. Keep in mind that these changes are just the groundwork of even bigger changes coming to Godot 4's multiplayer. In the pipeline, there's the new GDScript syntax for RPCs to talk about, the newly exposed ordered transfer mode, channels, eNet and WebRTC improvements, and even some news about the long-awaited node replication. Godot is once again participating in the Google Summer of Code. For those who don't know, Google Summer of Code is a program set up by Google to get more students involved in open source projects. Back in May, the Godot team selected 5 students to each implement a feature in Godot. The 5 students that were selected and their mentors have been working at it for almost 2 months. Let's take a peek on what they've been working on. The first feature is implementing a debug adapter protocol, or DAP, backend for Godot projects. It allows you to debug projects from an external editor as well. So far, the basics have already been implemented: pausing and continuing, stepping code and stepping into function calls, setting breakpoints. Since the DAP is supposed to be platform agnostic, you simply need to point your editor to the right port, 6009 by default. The next feature is adding pseudo-localization to Godot. First, let's look at an example input and output. You might ask, how can this possibly be useful? Let me explain. An intended feature for Godot is localization, where Godot is translated to different human languages like English, French, Spanish, Portuguese, etc., and the user can select what language they want to use. Now, at this point, all the translating has not been completed. New features are being constantly added to the engine. So, the team needs a way to know if new features are built in such a way to be compatible with other human languages, and that's where pseudo-localization comes in. Pseudo-localization adds accents, it adds characters, it uses fake BD to simulate right-to-left languages like Arabic. We can see if any GUI elements would break from localization without having to wait for a true and complete translation to be done. The next feature is improvements to Godot's soft body dynamics. Think of trees swaying in the wind. That sort of feature is accomplished using soft body physics. In order to get this working, a jet force object will be added to Godot. You can set parameters like jet strength and jet attenuation, which describe how the force decays with distance, and areas with custom gravity will also affect soft bodies. The next features automated graph layout in VisualScript and Visual Shader editors. While I still recommend learning how to program if you want to make games, I will always support improvements to Godot's graph-based visual editors. Anyone who has used them knows that as you continue to add nodes, it gets harder to keep track of what's going on. This feature aims to automatically organize the position of nodes in the Visual Shader and VisualScript editors, and it will do so using the Sugiyama methodology. Only the nodes you select will be automatically organized. Nodes will be organized horizontally first, and then be compressed vertically. And of course, you can undo and redo the change if you need to. The next feature is a command palette for the Godot editor. If any of you have ever used Sublime Text or Visual Studio Code, you're probably already familiar with command palettes. They provide a quick way to access commands that are usually hidden away in menus. A good command palette uses a fuzzy matcher to help you find the feature you are looking for. There's a proposal on Godot's GitHub to implement the transpiler for GDScript to C++. GDScript is a very practical language. I always tell newcomers to Godot that unless they have a very strong reason to use another language, you should be using GDScript with your Godot projects. The goal of this proposal is not to ignore or replace GDScript, but instead empower the language so that developers can have the best of both worlds. Here is an example script, showing GDScript mixed in with C++ code. This could make it easier to use external libraries or handle CPU-intensive operations. And now is the part of the show where we talk about some cool projects made with the Godot engine. Make Discord bots easily in Godot with the discord.gd plugin. It supports sending, editing, and replying to messages. It also supports sending embeds and files. You can also send screenshots of the Godot game to Discord. For the pixel artists among you, Aseprite Wizard is a plugin for importing animations from Aseprite using sprite frames to be used in animated sprite. ShaderV provides a ton of pre-made effects to be used in the Visual Shader editor, such as a variety of noises, blur, emboss, zoom, custom shapes, and more. For any mobile devs out there, user ShinNil has compiled a list of Android modules you can use with your Godot projects. Logic Circuit Simulator is a free and open source project that allows you to build logic gates and see the results. You can even save sections as prefabs and reuse them again. SmoothScroll is a node that allows you to smoothly scroll longer text boxes. Instead of creating portals using multiple cameras and stencil buffers, user FauxBoss teleports light rays using ray tracing. They say that this will be much easier to implement in Godot 4 thanks to compute shaders. TD Worlds is a dynamic, highly strategical game that challenges your skill. Build an impenetrable defense and get ready to plunge into a new, unknown world to uncover its secrets. Gladiator, grab your sword and equip your sandals and take on the world in multiplayer Swords and Sandals. Brutal, turn-based combat where gladiators can lose limbs and yell so loudly enemy heads will fall off. This is the most fun you'll ever have in the arena. Star Squadron Student Driver is a tongue-in-cheek space shooter where your only weapon is a ping-pong cannon. Survive 15 levels and you might just earn your pilot's license. Purrgatory is a visual novel about passing time in an afterlife where nothing really matters. Explore a whimsical point-and-click world, befriend 7 charming characters, and remember, forever's not so bad. Totems of Tag is dodgeball, but without any rules. A local multiplayer game for 2 to 4 players about throwing weird balls against your friends in weird arenas with weird power-ups. Bopimo is an upcoming online 3D platformer where you can make your own levels. In orbit above planet 33Z Alpha, your ship is attacked by the tendril of an unknown botanical life form. Use this invasive species' deadly red vines to create atmosphere for practical plants. Learn the nature of these plants to navigate through and reclaim your ship in Cosmosown. Cat Leather Jackets is a rhythm and visual novel game being developed on the Godot engine. The game follows Priya and her bandmates, Ian and David, as they get together to write and rehearse songs, try to find gigs and ultimately an audience for their music, all while trying to find independence and figuring out what they want to do with their lives. Brawlforming is a multiplayer platformer. Hop on and browse through the wide variety of levels created by other players. Play through them by yourself or with up to 15 friends/strangers. Capsule Wars is a fast-paced and highly mobile multiplayer FPS game that you can play with your friends and have a ton of fun. Help Oliver in this retro pixel and challenging platformer. Explore a cursed cave full of traps, secrets, and diamonds. Complete all the levels, get the biggest diamond for your girlfriend, and break the curse that is dooming you in Cursed Gem. Rabiscos is a multiplayer drawing game. Gather your friends, create your avatar, and join a room. Simple as that. In Godot Skater, you control a skateboard and pull off some cool tricks in this retro-inspired game. That's all for you this week. Like the video? Leave a comment for the algorithm. Thanks for watching.